It was just another day in my shitty life. Went to work, came home, ate frozen pizza and drank beer, and all because my ex-wife couldn't keep her legs together. I didn't invite the snake into my personal paradise, but I definitely welcomed her when she got there. I'm a man. Just a stupid, innocent man. I fell for a pretty face. Hell, I practically gave her my wife. I didn't even notice it happening. I watched the movers unload the truck and was glad that the empty house next door was finally sold. It was very depressing to see a dirty, empty house next door, especially since the previous owners, the Robertsons, were such a lively family. They had 3 teenage children, and the whole family led an active lifestyle. Children from other families were drawn to the house, and there was always noise and laughter coming from it. My wife and I would sometimes look out the side windows and watch as furniture was brought in. We saw a tall, attractive woman in her 30s directing the move. It quickly became clear that she was single and had no family other than herself. My wife waited 2 days, then went over to our new neighbor with a bottle of white wine and some fresh homemade cinnamon rolls. She came back about 2 hours later, slightly tipsy, with an empty plate. At that moment, I knew she had fallen in love with Shailene Murphy. Looking back, I can say that I was probably right, although at the time I had no idea how accurate I was. Oh my God, Max. She's so beautiful, sexy, and smart. You're going to fall in love with her when you meet her. Just don't fall too hard, Astrid giggled. That will never happen, baby, I replied. You know I'm a faithful husband. My good Saint Bernard. Loyal and dependable, Astrid said. 2 days later, when I saw that Shailene was about to mow the lawn, I walked over to her and introduced myself. I was going to mow too, but before I did, I walked over to her, extended my big, meaty hand, and welcomed her to our neighborhood. She took my outstretched hand and shook it firmly. I was impressed. I was also impressed by her appearance. I estimated her age to be around 30, like Astrid and me. Height probably 170 to 180 centimeters, weight 57 kilograms, with good proportions. She had shoulder-length red hair, sparkling green eyes, and an hourglass figure with large breasts. I wondered how long it would be before the single guys in the neighborhood started showing up at her door. I went back home and started mowing the lawn. When I finished, I grabbed a cold beer and went out to the porch to relax. Astrid was sitting on the porch swing reading one of Clive Cussler's novels. This woman is obsessed with Cussler. Before I mowed the lawn, I met a new neighbor. She's a very attractive woman. I wonder which of the guys in the neighborhood will be the first to ask her out, I said. When I didn't get an immediate response, I glanced at my wife, who seemed to have blushed. Her eyebrows were furrowed, and she had an expression on her face that I couldn't understand. None of those jokers are good enough for her, Astrid replied sharply. I was surprised by her harshness. I didn't think my comment would provoke such a strong reaction. Deciding that it was best to be cautious in this situation, I didn't respond and took a sip of beer. I work in construction, and in the summer, I help coach my daughter's soccer team at the AAU. Mary Jane, or MJ as she is known for short, has inherited her mother's looks, but my build. She is tall for her age and broad-shouldered. She also doesn't tolerate anyone's nonsense, which sometimes gets her into trouble. Since she got that from me, I know how to calm her down when necessary, which has saved us both many times while she was growing up. Astrid was always quick to criticize me when MJ got too cocky. Damn it, Maxwell, she got that from you. You need to rein her in before she goes down the wrong path, Astrid has said at least a dozen times over the past few years. Besides the tone of her voice, I can always tell when Astrid is angry with me because she calls me by my full name. She got that from my mother, who has called me that for the entire 38 years of my life. Astrid and my mom are alike, and sometimes I'm sure my mom loves her more than she loves me. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't want them both mad at me at the same time. Astrid and Shailene grew closer the longer Shailene lived next door. Wherever they were, at our house or Shailene's, They seemed to be together almost all the time when they weren't working. I didn't mind their friendship because Sheelin was very friendly to me, and of course she was easy to get along with. In fact, she was like the fourth member of our family. About a year after Sheelin moved in next door, I started to feel like something was wrong in my marriage. Once a month, I played golf with 3 friends, and I would leave the house at 6 in the morning and not return until 3 in the afternoon, as we would have lunch at the club and drink beer after hitting the little white ball around the course. When I returned home, Astrid was not there, which was not a big deal, but I noticed that the laundry had not been done and Astrid had not done her usual shopping. Since her car was at home, I figured she and Sheelin were busy and had run late. No big deal, except for her reaction when she walked in the door about 30 minutes later. Silly me, I just wanted to chat. "Hard day? Did you and Sheelin have a good time?" I asked innocently. "Are you checking up on me?" she snapped. "Since when do I have to report to you about my time?" During this brief argument, she never once looked me in the eye, then turned on her heel and walked out of the room. MJ, who was sitting with me in the room, looked at me in shock. "Wow, what was that, Dad?" MJ asked, gasping for breath. "Did I miss something that's really important to parents?" "I have no idea, kid. I'm as clueless as you are." "Where's my guide dog?" I said. For the next 2 weeks, there was no truce in the Warnock household. Astrid spent most of her time at home with Shelley, paying little attention to MDJ and me. Then our street had its annual party, which lasted 12 hours, with a dozen grills and salads and snacks brought by all the neighbors. We rented an inflatable trampoline and a basketball hoop for free, and I think there were a dozen frisbees in the air until it got dark. As usual, I worked at one of the grills preparing my signature dish, barbecue short ribs. I spent the first 6 hours at the grill, taking only a few minutes to grab another beer or go to the bathroom. Throughout the day, my daughter and other guests came over to chat with me, although my wife never approached me. I noticed that she spent most of the day with Sheelin, and I may be mistaken, but at one point it seemed to me that Shelin's hand had slipped into the back pocket of Astrid's tight shorts. In addition, several times during the day, I was sure I saw several women glance at Astrid and Sheelin and then whisper to each other. The whispering women stopped talking and moved away when they saw me looking in their direction. I didn't have a chance to talk to the other guests for the rest of the dinner, but when I finally got up to leave, several husbands asked me how I was handling the relationship between Astrid and Sheelin. "Are you getting your share?" asked Dave Baldwin, my neighbor of more than 10 years, as we sat at the table stuffing our bellies. Dave was a big goofball and probably the oldest 100-year-old man in the neighborhood among the husbands. He usually knew everything that annoyed many of us, but overall, he was harmless and not mean. There were 6 of us sitting at the table, and when Dave asked me the question, everyone fell silent. He clearly knew something I didn't, so I bluffed, hoping to shut him up. "Damn, Dave, no one should know I do this with both of them every night. This has to be our secret, buddy," I said with an exaggerated wink. Everyone except Dave laughed loudly. Dave just stared at me in confusion. A few minutes later, I grabbed Dave by the neck, squeezed hard, and practically dragged him to a secluded spot. "That's not cool, Dave, exposing me in front of everyone," I hissed at him. "If you know something, stop making us both look like idiots and talk to me." "How can you not know?" he asked, looking at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. "Everyone knows what's going on. Even old Lassiter knows, and he's half dead." "Everyone just thought you were okay with it because you guys have a threesome or something." I reached out to lean on Dave's muscular shoulder. I must have looked as bad as I felt because when I looked at Dave's face, all I saw was deep regret. I didn't know this man was capable of such emotion. "Oh shit, I'm sorry, man," he whispered. After a silence that seemed like an eternity but probably only lasted a few seconds, I asked the neighborhood gossip to tell me everything he knew, and everything he suspected. 15 minutes later, I realized my life would never be the same. After making Dave swear not to tell his wife about the new $300 fly fishing rod he bought without her knowledge, I spent the rest of the party drinking copious amounts of margaritas. Everyone thought I was the life of the party. I even got up and started dancing with the teenagers, which I know made my daughter very embarrassed. But no one could have guessed that earlier that day, my heart had been broken and trampled on. The next morning, I woke up with a terrible hangover. Astrid and MJ were watching TV in the living room when I stumbled in with a cup of coffee. "Hey, Mr. Happy. I wasn't sure you'd wake up until tomorrow," my daughter muttered. Quiet, not so loud. "Who's the guest?" I said, nodding toward Astrid. MJ followed my gaze and looked at her mother. I knew that she, like me, knew that Astrid didn't spend much time at home, but I wondered if she knew as little about my affair as I did. We would have to talk about this very soon. "Oh, it's Mom," she said cheerfully. "You remember her, right? You married her 15 years ago. We have a beautiful, smart daughter." I smiled, which was incredibly difficult in my condition. I saw the look of disgust on Astrid's face. My daughter was jumping into the same pile of shit I was in, even if neither of us could understand how I got there. "I'm going to Shell," Astrid smiled, getting up from her chair. Sure you go," MJ replied. "I don't have to put up with my 13-year-old daughter's behavior," Astrid muttered. "Talk to your daughter, Maxwell, before I kick her ass." "Today is your last day, Astrid," I said quietly. "Then talk to her," she said as she walked away. "That was interesting," MJ said. To say that the conversation that followed was strange would be an understatement. Like me, MJ felt that something was wrong with her mother. But when I told her what Dave had said, she was shocked. I breathed a slight sigh of relief that it wasn't just me. "Wow, so your mom's bisexual," she said. "How trendy. Who would have thought? Not you." Number I had no idea, until old Dave told me what apparently everyone knew. Except the two of us, I explained. At the party last night, she and Shalane were being pretty open, and Dave immediately asked me if the three of us were connected in some way. Apparently she was a little more cautious around us, at least until yesterday. "So you didn't know your own wife was bisexual?" she asked incredulously. "You didn't know your own mother was bisexual?" I asked, mocking her tone. "Okay, you got me," she said, lowering her eyes to the floor. When she looked back at me, she looked determined. "So what's the plan, Daddy? Subtlety, guerrilla warfare, a direct hit?" "First we need to gather more information, baby. Then we strike," I said. "I won't tolerate her cheating on me with another man. I won't tolerate her cheating on me with a woman. I'm not like that." "Can I come with you?" "Sure, baby. In this state, you're old enough to decide who you want to live with. But I'm not staying here. It's too close to her." "Can we at least stay in town until I graduate?" "Sure." I spent most of Sunday looking for family lawyers in our area. On Monday morning, I made an appointment, and on Thursday, I met with Lauren Kennedy face-to-face. By Tuesday of the following week, she had prepared the documents for my dear wife. It was done on the same day at the bank where she worked, as she was leaving the building for her lunch break. "You couldn't wait until I got home to file for divorce? You just had to embarrass me at work, didn't you?" Astrid yelled at me on the phone a few minutes after she received the papers. "Just trying to spread the shame around. You reap what you sow," I replied. "Well, you took your time," she croaked before hanging up. After hanging up, I noted to myself that she hadn't apologized or said she didn't want a divorce. I decided that in the long run, that should make things easier. I called MJ to warn her that her mother was being sued and advised her to keep a low profile. When I got home, she was in her bedroom, but quickly came out to hug and kiss me. When we parted, she raised an eyebrow. I just smiled back. Dinner was unusually quiet. MJ tried to make conversation, but seeing that nothing was coming, she quickly finished her meal and went to her room. Astrid and I finished in silence and decided to go to the living room to talk. I poured 2 glasses of wine, and she cleared the table. I guess I should apologize for not giving you anything in our marriage, but it's perfectly clear to me that I can't give you anything. How long have you known that you're bisexual? Did you know before we got married? I didn't plan it, Astrid said. I had no idea. I'm bi. I like women. She's beautiful. And sexy. You know that. It just happened. And so on and so forth, I interrupted her as she frowned. Why were MJ and I the last to know about this? It would be nice if the neighbors didn't look at us with pity or ridicule. She lowered her eyes to the carpet and blushed deeply. You know how humiliating it was when Dave asked me at the party if we were in a love triangle? He did it at the table where all the neighbors were sitting. I'm sorry, Max. I didn't realize we weren't being careful enough when you and MJ weren't around, Astrid said. So now MJ knows too. God, she must be furious with me. That woman... No, she feels the same way I do. That woman isn't as important as what you did to me. You broke your vow. Remember how you made it 15 years ago? It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. You made a vow to me, I said. And in the last few weeks, you've not only broken your vows, but you've completely disgraced your family. At that moment, the doorbell rang. A surprise. Astrid opened the door and returned with Sheelin. Sheelin followed her in, holding Astrid's hand. They sat down together on the sofa, and I remained seated in my lazy boy chair. I'm so sorry, Max. I really am. We should have done better. We really didn't plan this, Sheelin said. That's obvious, at least, I replied. But I have to tell you, Shell, if you were a man, I would have gotten out of this chair and beaten you unconscious. The only reason I'm still sitting here is because I was taught never to hit a woman. But right now, I'm seriously reconsidering that. You knew Astrid was married. When things got tense, you two should have stepped back and looked at things from a different perspective. You both destroyed my marriage and our family. I love you, Astrid. We deserved better. You're right, Astrid whispered. At least we had a civil divorce. I bought a smaller house on the other side of town, and MJ moved in with me. Astrid was welcome to visit. It took MJ a while to bond with her mother again, but she eventually did, and she even developed a fairly warm relationship with Shalane. They look so cute together, Dad, MJ said to me one day. They're almost like a teenage couple. They play tag and often touch and hug each other when they think I'm not looking. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. I didn't smile, and I knew MJ felt awkward, probably because she felt like she was betraying me. I didn't want her to feel like she had to choose sides. It's okay, sweetie. Just don't let them do anything in front of you that you wouldn't do in front of them. Understand? I said. And I don't want to hear anything about their relationship. She's your mother and always will be, but she's not my wife anymore. She cheated on me. Period. I understand, Dad. When are you going to find someone? Not right now, kid. I need time to work up the courage to get back on the horse. Apparently, I didn't get back on the horse fast enough to please MJ because she gave me a push. She made the varsity soccer team, and as usual, I was able to attend most of her games. During the 3rd game of the season, I was sitting alone watching the game when I felt someone sit down next to me on the metal bleachers. From the scent of her perfume, I knew she was a woman, but I didn't pay any attention to her for the next few minutes. Yes, your daughter said you probably wouldn't pay any attention to me, said a voice that sounded remarkably like that of Fleetwood Mac singer Stevie Nicks. Intrigued by the sound, I turned to my left to look at the owner of that voice, and instantly froze. Wow, this woman was very sexy, and she was talking to me. Damn it. I was 15 again. My little brain started racing and my big brain stopped working altogether. Wow. MJ saw right through you. First she predicted that you would ignore me, and then you froze like a virgin on a first date, said that voice. I know I blushed. I took a few deep breaths. Come on, Max, you can do this, I thought, sitting back down. You're just amazing. Where are you from? I said out loud, cursing myself inside. I guessed she was a couple of years older than me, 45 at most, but only because I thought she was another player's parent. Otherwise, I would have guessed she was no older than 35. Her black hair was pulled back into a high ponytail, and her slightly tanned face wore very little makeup. Since it was a fairly warm day in late August, she was wearing a Glen Soccer Mom t-shirt that looked great on her and short, tight-fitting denim shorts that showed off her athletic legs. And that's when I noticed she was watching me assess her... Way to go, Romeo. Are you always this obvious, or is it just me? She asked with a hint of sarcasm. And by the way, I came from the parking lot, just like everyone else. Just like everyone else? I don't think so, I smirked. This time she blushed. Haley Stanwyck, she said, holding out her hand. I'm Jenna's mom, the goalkeeper. I felt it immediately when I took her hand in mine for a quick handshake. It was almost like a static shock. Oh, she said softly. Yeah, I replied just as quietly. There was an explosion of noise from the stands. Glenn had scored a goal and put his team ahead 1-0. My new friend and I missed the goal. We sat together and talked until the end of the game. She told me that MJ had asked her to introduce me to her lonely, moronic father, knowing that I hadn't even looked at another woman since my divorce almost a year ago. I wondered if MJ had told her that my ex-wife had left me for another woman. Haley had been divorced for 5 years. Her husband was an alcoholic. Jenna, the goalkeeper, was in high school and was her only child. Haley worked in human resources at an electronics factory in our town. Glenn won the game 3-1. We both got up to leave the stands. I muttered that it was nice to meet her. She smiled at me, and her green eyes looked into mine for what seemed like an eternity before she leaned in and kissed me gently on the cheek. I blushed again as she walked over to her daughter. Dad, do you remember me? MJ looked at me reproachfully from the stands. It's time to go, Dad. Okay, looks like everything went well. Did you notice we won? She said. And by the way, you're welcome. Oh yeah, thanks, baby. She's fantastic, I exclaimed. So did you get her number? MJ asked, watching my spirits sink. God, Dad, you're pathetic, she said as we headed for the car. MJ, I'm out of practice. I never go on dates. When I got married, I mistakenly thought I wouldn't have to go on dates anymore. You know, until death do us part and all that, I said. Oh, you mean the part Mom conveniently forgot? Did I mention that she's picked up a lot of my behavior? On the way home, MJ texted Jenna and got her mom's phone number for me. Offer to drive her to the next game at Hooper, she said. God, do I really have to do everything for you? She explained. I drove Haley to the Hooper game, and we sat next to each other again during the game. I noticed that several other moms were glancing at us from time to time. After the game, we went to Arby's. I know how to treat a lady, I proclaimed as I carried the tray of food to the table. I'm a simple woman, Max. This is enough for me. If you're not rude to me, we'll get along fine. I've been through this before. I don't need to go through it again, she said. I understand. I have a daughter. Any guy who even touches her once. You would have liked my father, she said. When he found out that Jack was bullying me, he went to his workplace and beat him half to death. He happily spent the night in jail until the president of my ex's company released him and refused to press charges. Same thing with my ex. I think the president told my ex that he got what he deserved and that if he wanted to keep his job, he wouldn't press charges or go to a psychologist. I like that. That president seems like a good man, too, I said. Despite all of this woman's physical attributes, I was attracted to the fact that we seemed to have a connection. I have to admit, I doubted I would ever have something like this after my breakup with Astrid. Speaking of Astrid, she came to MJ's next home game alone. I was already sitting in the stands with Haley when Astrid hesitantly took a seat in the front row on the other side of the arena. "Isn't that—" Haley began to ask. "Yes," I interrupted, looking at the field. My eyes met MJ's just as the game was about to start. She noticed her mother in the stands and smiled. My heart skipped a beat, but then I remembered that my problems with Astrid had nothing to do with MJ, and that she would always need her mother, just like I needed mine. I knew Haley felt awkward. I hugged her and pulled her close. I kissed her gently on the cheek. "That's in the past, baby. There are no failures in my world. I may be slow, but I'm moving forward," I said. "We're only getting along for MJ's sake. I've seen her maybe twice in the last year. You can call me petty, but I didn't go over to say hi to my ex." After the game, Haley and I waited on the sidelines while MJ ran up to her mom and hugged her so hard she was drenched in sweat. I smiled when Astrid recoiled at first when MJ hugged her, but then gathered her strength and relaxed. It was the only time Astrid didn't mind a sweaty body pressed against her. After a couple of minutes, Astrid pulled away, glancing quickly at me, and MJ came over to Haley, Jenna, and me. She started to apologize, but I stopped her. "No need, baby. It's okay." I knew very little about Astrid's life. I had asked my daughter not to discuss her mother's life with me, and she mostly obeyed. Sometimes she would make brief comments, but nothing more. That was fine with me. However, right after football season ended, she told me that Astrid and Sheelan were planning to get married before Christmas. MJ would be the best man and maid of honor. I told MJ to give the happy couple my best wishes. "Just pass them on. That's it. She was your wife for 15 years, Dad. Don't you think you should call her yourself and congratulate her from the bottom of your heart? Maybe give her a gift?" my daughter asked. "We've already talked about this, MJ," I replied. "The fact that she's getting married doesn't change my feelings for her or what she did. The day I found out she was cheating on me, I stopped being Joe's nice guy. She and Sheelan can rot in hell together, I don't care. I know that on that day I lost my authority in my daughter's eyes. I wasn't proud of my feelings, but I wasn't going to apologize for them either. Astrid had destroyed my world. I couldn't congratulate her on marrying the man she had done that to. Haley was incredibly patient with me. I was still guided by my outdated ideas about dating. We went on 12 dates and became quite close emotionally, but not so much sexually. I was indecisive. Physically, I knew Astrid like the back of my hand, literally. But Haley was completely new to me. I knew I was overthinking things, but... We went to a nice Hungarian restaurant and then went back to her place to watch a movie on Netflix. Her daughter was sleeping over at a friend's house, and during dinner, Haley took the flirting and touching to the next level. I felt like I knew where the evening was going, but Haley still managed to catch me off guard. She asked me to find a movie on Netflix while she went to the kitchen to pour us a glass of wine. When she came back into the room with the wine, she was wearing only a black bra and matching bikini bottoms. She smiled modestly as she handed me the glass and sat down, pressing herself close to us. She purred. "I hope you don't think I'm being too pushy. But you're killing me, Max. It's time to take things to the next level. I know you're into me, and I'm into you. Now show me." We never finished the movie. I held her in my arms on the couch and kissed her passionately, and 10 minutes later, when she led me to her bedroom, our clothes were scattered all over the living room floor. "Damn, woman, that was intense," I whispered in her ear. "What are you going to do for the next 50 years? She giggled. "Haley and I got married about 2 years after we started dating. She really is my other half. I am constantly grateful to my daughter, not only for pushing me, but also for helping me find the woman I will love for the rest of my life. The best gift of my life." Haley was right, too. I really liked her father, even though he threatened to kill me when we first met. After her experience with her first husband, her father didn't want to risk it happening again. So the first chance he got to leave us alone when we met, he explained to me that if I even thought about laying a hand on his daughter, I would be castrated. I have a daughter too. Not only do I understand, but I love her, I said. After that, we got along great. To this day, he's my favorite fishing buddy. I didn't expect MJ to come home from college for spring break early, so I was pleasantly surprised when I came home from work and saw her car parked in front of the house Haley and I bought 3 years ago. I knew Haley would be home any minute. It was a shame Jenna couldn't join us, but she didn't have any extra vacation days at work. I burst into the house with a wild shout, expecting MJ to throw herself into my arms like we usually did when we hadn't seen each other for months. Instead, I saw my 20-year-old daughter lying half on the kitchen table, crying like a child who had just skinned her knee. "What happened, baby?" I asked quietly, stroking her head. She cried for another minute or so before finally lifting her head. "I don't want to be a snitch, Dad, but you always taught me to do the right thing, and this is the right thing," she croaked. "This will kill Sheelan." "That doesn't sound good. Tell me it's your stupid mother again," I said sadly. "Yes," she grimaced. "I stopped by Mom's before coming home. I have a key, so I just walked in. I knew Sheelan wasn't home yet, so I was shocked when I heard two people clearly having sex in the bedroom. I had to know, Dad. I had to. So I went upstairs and opened the door. It wasn't locked. I don't know who that woman is, but I know what I saw. I know she's my mother, but I love Sheelan too. I can't say anything, Dad. It would be wrong. I can't pretend I didn't see anything and disrespect Sheelan. She's been good to me." I wasn't surprised when they called me. Why is it never this woman's fault when she can't keep her legs together? "You bastard!" she screamed. "You made her tell Shell, didn't you, you jealous little Boy Scout?" "So it's my fault she's a fickle bitch?" I growled. "I never told our daughter what to do if she ended up in bed with a girl who was barely older than her. Don't blame me because she knows right from wrong." 2 weeks later, my boss and I were sitting in the bar of his favorite upscale restaurant, having a drink after work. We were on our second glass when I happened to glance over and saw her sitting alone in the far corner of the bar, looking like she had been crying and was completely miserable. Despite the circumstances, she was still a beautiful woman. I hadn't seen her in years. My boss knew about my previous family problems, so a brief explanation was enough, and I headed over to Shellen. Up close, I saw that she had already drunk at least half a bottle, and it was only 6:15. "No, thank you. Don't buy me a drink. Please leave me alone," she said when I approached her. She didn't even look at me, just assumed I was trying to pick her up. I guess when you're as beautiful as she is, men often hit on you. I stood silently next to her until she finally looked at me. She visibly flinched, and her eyes filled with tears again. "Great. You came to make fun of me, I guess. Well, I guess I deserve it. Go ahead," she croaked. I'd like to think I'm better than her, but circumstances proved me only half right. She helped destroy my marriage, broke my soul, and ripped my heart out. I'll never forget that, so I knew I could never forgive her. Come on, Sheelan. She threw away a 15-year marriage to cheat on you. You should have known she was capable of that, I snorted. I guess I never believed in the old saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. That's probably why it's an old saying, she said. At least you lived with him for 15 years. I lived with him for just over 5. I guess the more you do it, the easier it gets, I replied. She looked guilty. You know, Max, I really loved you as a friend. Like I said, I didn't want it to turn out this way. It just did. And that's your answer, I said. Like I told you years ago, you knew she was married. Only a jerk chases a married woman. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Think about that now. Put yourself in her shoes. She burst into tears. Obviously not for the first time since she sat down at the bar. The bartender came over with a box of napkins and asked if we wanted another drink. Sheelan thanked him for the napkins, and I asked for 2 cups of coffee. We drank 2 cups of coffee, then I walked her to her car and drove her home. She had trouble getting out of my car, so I walked her to the door, took the key from her hand, opened the door, and walked her to the sofa. "Wait, Max, you know I don't do men," she began. "I'm happily married, Shell. Just because Astrid didn't keep her promises doesn't mean I won't keep mine. Beauty isn't everything, baby. Maybe you'll learn something." I laid her down on the sofa, put a sofa cushion under her head, and covered her with a blanket that was hanging on the back of the sofa. "Hi, honey," I said to my wife when she answered my call. "I'll tell you a story when I get home. Yes, I'll be there in 15 minutes. A couple of days ago, Haley and I had a wonderful time at our grandson Matthew's 5th birthday party. MDJ, her husband Ed, and their 2 children, the aforementioned Matthew and 7-year-old Nikki, live about an hour's drive from our house. Also at the party were my stepdaughter Jenna, a budding accountant who lives in the same town as her stepsister, her husband Alvin, and their 2 children, as well as Sheelin. Although I had my doubts, MJ continued to be friends with her mother's ex-wife, telling me that it was the right thing to do and that I didn't have to take it into account if I didn't like it. I thought about it for a few days and realized that she could be friends with whomever she wanted, and I didn't have to interact with Sheelin if I didn't want to. Over time, we developed a friendly relationship. My grandchildren adore their Aunt Shell, and I won't deprive them of that. The only thing missing from the party was Grandma Astrid, who, as usual, was too busy with her life to come. My grandchildren don't understand why Grandma Astrid doesn't visit often, but neither Shell nor I miss our ex-wife. Astrid moved in with the girl MJ caught her having sex with and divorced Shellin. About a year later, MJ found out that she was living with a completely different woman, and another year later, that she was living in a different apartment with 2 other young women, although MJ wasn't sure if she was living with the couple or just sleeping with them. MDJ and Ed also said that they sometimes saw her in town with a man. MDJ is both ashamed and angry at her mother. I can't say I blame her.